Hello and welcome again to Apologiaforum 2024. We are again here with Professor Alister McGrath. Professor McGrath, in our last video, you offered critical perspectives on David Hume's argument that posits natural laws through empiricism, surmises natural laws to be inviolable, and crucially, defines miracles as impossible violations of said laws. I'd now like to continue by seeking a better alternative for the last assumption in Hume's argument, namely the appropriate definition of a miracle. Professor McGrath, how would you define a miracle, and are there different types of miracles that should be distinguished?
Well, I think defining a miracle is quite difficult, and of course there is no general definition of what a miracle is. Hume proposed one which clearly doesn't work. Others could be proposed. For example, Augustine of Hippo, writing in the 5th century, said that in effect a miracle is something that exceeds the capacity of nature to produce. In other words, something is happening that nature on its own would not be able to deliver. And therefore it is miraculous in that something has happened to enable the natural order to do something different, and that stands out and it is miraculous. And so the question is, what is it that makes this miraculous? And of course, the answer would be in some way divine engagement with the natural world, which enables it to do things which otherwise it could not do.
And what about the different kinds of miracles? Are there like some crucial classifications that one should be aware about?
Well, people have proposed some definitions. Some people would say that, in effect, the important thing about a miracle is its objective aspects. In other words, what has actually happened. Others would say, no, it's a subjective impact. A miracle, in effect, persuades us that something very special is happening here, raising questions about the identity of the person who's performing this miracle. So we could draw a distinction there between the objective and subjective aspects of miracles. But in the New Testament, the emphasis is not simply on what has happened, but what it means. And so very often, when we see Christ doing something that is categorized as a miracle, the response of people is, who is this that's able to do these things? What does this action tell us about the identity and the significance of Christ? So one of the key questions is not simply, what is this miracle, but what does this miracle tell us about the one who's performing it?
That's a very important viewpoint. And one could also ask about the necessity of the concept of a miracle, because for contrast, we could talk about God's actions in the universe without invoking the concept of supernaturality. So is the concept of a miracle also something that is not strictly necessary, or are there contexts in which that really is a crucial concept to have?
I think in many ways a miracle is defined by the perception of an individual. This is not normal. This is strange. This is unusual. This suggests there's something very special happening here. And that's one of the reasons why it's very difficult to give a purely objective account of what a miracle is. Because in many ways it's about an individual seeing this and saying, this is strange, this is wonderful. Who is this person who's doing this? And again, if you look at the New Testament accounts of miracles, there is the action that's being done, but then there is the response of the individuals. Who is this that is able to do this? So we need to try and hold these two things together.
Thank you. And as we have now touched upon many interesting approaches to miracles, but then comes also the question of everyday applicability. One might say that, okay, so this is all well and good, but how do miracles concern me, especially as we can't predict those kinds of miracles that go beyond the capabilities of nature? Why should one be interested in miracles at all?
Well, I think people are interested in miracles because they do suggest that there is the ongoing presence of God in the world, which shows itself in various ways. And obviously, many of the ways in which the presence of God shows itself in the world are quite simple, quite straightforward, like someone feeling God's presence in their lives, someone praying to God. But there will be moments where some people will feel that something special has happened. And they will use the language of a miracle to refer to something unexpected. For example, somebody recovering from an illness to everyone's surprise. And they will use the word miracle, not necessarily suggesting God intervened at that moment, but certainly there is something here which is unexpected, unusual, and will use the language of miracle to refer to it.
So you would regard it as completely acceptable to use the term miracle to refer to such incidences that are deeply meaningful for oneself without actual regard to the origins of said event?
Well, I think many people do talk about something miraculous happening to them. And what they mean by that is something that's unexpected, something was not, something that's taken them by surprise, healing an illness or perhaps avoiding a catastrophe. And they will use this to say, look, this is really significant to me. And the implication is in some way God is involved in making this happen. So it's not quite like a New Testament miracle, but nevertheless it's somebody experiencing that something has happened which is really significant to them and fits into their way of understanding the way in which God interacts with the world.
Thank you. And that leads us to our final question, continuing from the perspective of an ordinary Christian living an everyday life. What role should the subject matter of miracles play in the life of a Christian, and what would be a healthy and balanced theological and philosophical approach to them?
I think most Christians would say, I experience God in my life, I welcome this, and I don't really expect anything more. That I know God, God knows me, I worship God on Sundays, I read the Bible, and all of this helps nourish my Christian faith. And many Christians just lead a very ordinary life and may not even use the word miraculous because they have what they consider to be a stable relationship with God on which they depend, which helps them get through difficult situations. But then every now and then something happens. They suddenly realize, look, I was meant to be there today, I didn't go there, and if I had, there would have been a road accident, I'd be seriously ill. It's a miracle I wasn't there. And they will see that in some way as God's providential hand guiding them. And I think you can understand why they feel that way. It's a miracle in some sense of the word. And people will just feel that that is a valid use of this word to mean something that God has done or which has not been allowed to happen, which is affecting their lives. So I think for many Christians, the word miracle does refer to something. It could be something didn't happen, it could be something did happen, but nevertheless, they feel that it's a demonstration of God's ongoing involvement in their lives. So that's important for a lot of people. In my own case, I don't really experience the miraculous in my life, but I love God, I know God, and maybe one day there will be a miracle. But it's one of those things which it's extraordinary. I don't depend on them. But I have this regular relationship with God which works very, very well. And if sometime a miracle were to happen, well, I would be delighted.
Wonderful. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.